Hey, Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday Learning Bhagavatam class. Today we'll be speaking on Canto 9, Liberation, Chapter 2, The Dynasties of the Sons of Manu. And our guest speaker is Prabhupada, Prana, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, welcome, Prabhuji.
Hare
Over
Krishna.
to you.
Set my obeisances. Apologies that I wasn't connected on time there. So, did you have a little kirtan beforehand?
Uh, we just played some music from YouTube, Prabhu. So
Uh,
we can do a kirtan if you wish.
no, I've kept you waiting, so maybe just get right into it if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, Prabhu. Hare
Uh, I'll
Krishna.
just I'll do the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, ninth Canto, Chapter 2, The Dynasties of the Sons of Manu. So we shall read the summary of this chapter and then we'll read a few of the verses, particularly the first few verses. So this second chapter describes the dynasties of the sons of Manu headed by Karusha. After Sudyumna accepted the order of Vanaprastha and departed to the forest, by Vashvata Manu being desirous of sons, worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead and consequently begot 10 sons like Maharaj Ikshvaku, all of whom were like their father. One of these sons, Prishadra, was engaged in the duty of protecting cows at night with a sword in his hand. Following the order of his spiritual master, he would stand in this way for the entire night. Once, in the darkness of night, a tiger seized a cow from the cowshed, and when Prishadra came to know this, he took a sword in his hand and followed the tiger. Unfortunately, when he finally approached the tiger, he could not distinguish between the cow and the tiger in the dark, and thus he killed the cow. Because of this, his spiritual master cursed him to take birth in a Sudra family. But Prishadra practiced mystic yoga in Bhakti Yoga. He worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Prishadra practiced mystic yoga, and in Bhakti Yoga he worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he voluntarily entered a blazing forest fire, thus relinquishing his material body and going back home, back to Godhead. Kavi, the youngest son of Manu, was a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from his very childhood. From Manu's son, known as Karusha, a sect of Kshatriyas known as Karushas were generated. Manu also had a son known as Drishta, from whom another sect of Kshatriyas were generated. But although they were born of one who had the qualities of Kshatriyas, they became Brahmins. From Nriga, another son of Manu, came the sons and grandsons known as Sumati, Bhutta, Jyoti, and Vasu. From Vasu, in succession, came Partika, and from him came Ogavan. Descending in order from the seminal dynasty of Narishyanta, another son of Manu were Chitrasena, Riksha, Midvan, Purna, Indrasena, Vitihotra, Satyashrava, Urushrava, Devadatta, and Agnivesha. From the Kshatriya known as Agnivesha came the celebrated Brahmin dynasty known as Agniveshyayana. From the seminal dynasty of Dista, another son of Manu came Nabaga, and from him in succession came Balandana, Vatsapriti, Pramshu, Pramati, Kanitra, Chakshusha, Vivimshati, Ramba, Kaninetra, Karandama, Avikshit, Maruta, Dama, Rajavardhana, Sudriti, Narakevala, Dunduman, Vegavan, Buddha, and Trinabindu. In this way, many sons and grandsons were born in this dynasty. From Trinabindu came a daughter named Ilavila, from whom Kuvera took birth. Trinabindu also had three sons named Vishala, Shunyabandhu, and Dumraketu. The son of Vishala was Hemachandra, his son was Dumraksha, and his son was Samyama. The sons of Samyama were Devaja and Krishashva. Shishashva's son Somadatta performed an ashma, made a sacrifice, and by worshipping the Supreme Person of Godhead, Vishnu, he achieved the supreme perfection of going back to Godhead. Om Agyanatamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshunlitamina Tajmai Shigrive Namaha Kam Karoti Vachilam Pangam Lagate Grimyati Kripa Tamaham Bande Shigrim Dinitaranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Vedagad Har Shiva Sadi Gora Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you for inviting me along to your Sangha again. It's always a pleasure to be with you all. I hope everyone's keeping well. So I'm just going to go through the first few verses here. And this captures some very good devotional principles. So from text 1, Sukadeva Goswami said, thereafter when his son Sudyumna had thus gone to the forest to accept the order of Vanaprastha, by Vaishvata Manu Shraddhadev being desirous of getting more sons performed severe austerities on the bank of the Yamuna for 100 years. So I'm thinking that probably those 100 years were quite long years. The time which we consider a year is only like a fraction of a day in demigod's time. Nevertheless, Prabhupada talks about an insect's 100 years, it may be a day to us, and our 100 years may be a day to the demigods. It's all relevant. It's all relative. Excuse me a second, I've kind of lost the place a bit. I'll just go back. Here we go. Okay, so I'm just going to skip a couple of verses here. So this devotee, Prishadra, he was following the orders of his spiritual master. He was engaged as a protector of cows. He would stand all night with a sword to give the cows protection. And that's quite a brave thing to do. You're standing there with a sword in case a tiger comes. I don't know too many people on the planet nowadays who would stand with a sword to give protection to cows. They'd probably lie, behind a bush with some night sights, night vision goggles, and higher powered rifle. And if the cows happen to get taken away, then so be it. They wouldn't be risking their life to protect the cows. In fact, they wouldn't risk anything to protect the cows because nowadays they don't protect the cows. Other than the devotees are doing something quite revolutionary in the eyes of the general public. When you meet people, sometimes I've been to these vegan festivals, distributing prasad or doing kirtan, and we talk about cow protection, then it's actually such a real mind blower for some of these people because their type of cow protection or animal welfare is they actually just don't have anything to do with the animals. So in this way, it's actually quite ignorant because they don't realise that, particularly the cows, they have a purpose, and the humans and the cows have a symbiotic relationship. The cow protection is there. From our side, we serve the cows by giving protection, and the cows in return serve by giving milk, ploughing the land, etc. But the short-sightedness of the cow killers, they simply just want to enjoy the cow by killing it and eating its body. Prabhupada says that if we make prasadam cooked in ghee, then people will be able to give up eating meat. So this is scientific. Interesting that there was one boy who was, I know him quite well, he's a lawyer in Glasgow, and he was brought up a vegan. His mother was a staunch militant vegan. But when I spoke to him about cow protection, he said, actually, this is the real solution. He understood that his veganism, a lifelong thing now, he's in his 30s, he realised it was actually simply a protest against the cruelty to animals. But he's seen that this Goraksha, cow protection, is actually the real solution. And it's interesting because the rise in veganism has caused the dairy industry to be quite concerned about the future of it. And the only real future, which is sustainable, is to actually give the cows protection, because as more people become aware of the cruelty and start to disassociate themselves from that by, like you say, voting with their feet or by voting with their wallets, they don't invest in that cruel industry, then for such a dairy industry en masse to survive, then hopefully it will come to the point where they see, even if they don't have the sentiment for it, at least if they do it even for monetary reasons, then it would be a blessing for the cows and a blessing for them as well. So this devotee, Prishadara, he would stand all night with a sword in his hands. So Prabhupada says here in the purport, one who becomes Virashana takes the vow to stand all night with a sword to give protection to the cows, which is quite a thing to do, to stay awake all night and be vigilant the whole night through. We see even in military, if people are on guard, they have shifts because they know that you can only be attentive for so long, and then you start to lose your focus. But here, this person was so fixed, he'd stand all night long every night, and then finally, he did experience a ferocious animal, a tiger. And it may well be that he's experienced the tigers before. It's not necessarily that this is the first and only time. So Prabhupada says here that the Kshatriya would take a vow to protect the cows from ferocious animals even at night. What then is to be said of sending cows to slaughterhouses? This is the most sinful activity in human society. So interesting, there was a morning walk where Srila Prabhupada was asked this question by one of his disciples. He said, due to all the sinful activity which is going on, especially animal slaughter and cow slaughter, abortion, shouldn't there be some global reaction? And Prabhupada said yes, except for the Sankirtan movement, which is holding back the tide of Kali Yuga. So therefore, we shouldn't underestimate the power of chanting or japa. It's purifying the whole atmosphere. It's not just purifying ourselves. And of course, it's more purifying if we're actually being attentive. Sometimes we chant japa and we're actually just doing the numbers. We're just trying to squeeze it in. But actually, the focus should really be on trying to be conscious of Krishna when we're chanting. And the rest of the days, actually, we just squeeze it in, because chanting Krishna's name is the most important activity. It's the Yuga Dharma. This is our saving grace. Prabhupada brought this. Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, they brought this to Kali Yuga so that we could be delivered in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And even though, regardless of what our past was before becoming a devotee, then that's not held against us. As soon as we take to the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra, we're qualified even beyond Brahman, regardless of whether one was born in one social order. Then by engaging in the Yuga Dharma, then one has transcended all these social orders. Nevertheless, we may have a material nature which we can engage side by side while being a devotee. So, next verse. Once at night, while it was raining, a tiger entered the land of the cowshed. Upon seeing the tiger, all the cows who were lying down got up in fear and scattered here and there on the land. So as soon as the cows seen the tiger, they didn't have to be notified that this is dangerous. They knew it was dangerous from first instance. When the very strong tiger seized the cow screamed in distress and fear, and Prashadra, hearing the screaming, immediately followed the sound. He took up his sword, but because the stars were covered by clouds, he mistook the cow for the tiger and mistakenly cut off the cow's head with great force. So we can just imagine trying to do such a service in the dark, and he made this mistake. The very purpose he was there was to protect the cows, and he did the very opposite. He was well intended. Because the tiger's ear had been cut by the edge of the sword, the tiger was very afraid and it fled from that place while bleeding on the street. In the morning, when Prashadra, who was quite able to subdue his enemy, saw that he had killed the cow, although at night he thought he had killed the tiger, he was very unhappy. So we can't imagine the distress. He must have been very soft-hearted and of great character that he would risk his life standing there with a sword to protect the cows, and then he must have been devastated that he realized he'd actually killed a cow. Although Prashadra had committed the sin unknowingly, his family priest Vashishta cursed him, saying, "In your next life you shall not be able to become a Kshatriya. Instead, you shall take birth as a Shudra because of killing the cow." So, obviously, Prashadra was quite attached to his caste, his Varna, and to take birth in a lower Varna would be not being progressive. Srila Prabhupada mentions that if one is born a Sudra, one should not be satisfied to remain a Sudra, one should elevate to the position of Brahmin. So for a devotee, some devotees get first initiation, some get second initiation. Now, Brahmin initiation doesn't mean to say that even if you don't have Brahmin initiation, that you're not got Brahminical qualities. The initiation is an opportunity to be trained up to serve the deity. The two main duties of the Brahmin are preaching and deity worship. If one is engaging in any of these services under the direction of the spiritual master while being second initiated, then they become qualified as a Brahmin. It's not that we get Brahmin initiation because we have become qualified, but actually receiving Brahmin initiation is an opportunity to be trained, to be qualified. And this means that we don't become proud. A Brahmin is supposed to be humble. Sometimes someone gets Brahmin initiation and they become proud to wear it like a badge of honor. But actually, although it's an honor to be initiated, especially second, then we shouldn't take it as some kind of status symbol. That's the very opposite meaning of what it's there. A Brahmin is supposed to be humble, isn't it? So in the purport here, Prabhupada said, it appears that Vashishta was not free from tamagun, the mode of ignorance. As the family priest or spiritual master of Prashadra, Vashishta should have taken Prasadra's offence very lightly, but instead Vashishta cursed him to become a Shudra. So this cursing him is in mode of ignorance because he's become angry with him and he's punishing him rather than consoling him. You know, just imagine if you did that yourself. Any of our spiritual masters, they wouldn't be cursing us. They'd want to console that we're already devastated by the mistake that we made. So Prabhupada here very correctly mentions this is Tamagun. He he mistakenly did this, and Prabhupada says it should have been taken very lightly. So although it was the killing of a cow, his intention was good. It was simply a mistake. But it's interesting though, because we're going to see soon that Prishadra, he actually doesn't have to take birth as a Shudra because he goes back to Godhead. It is the duty of a family priest not to curse a disciple, but to give him relief through the performance of some sort of atonement. Vaisheshta, however, did just the opposite. So, in that sense, you wonder, was this the will of the Lord that he became angry? Of course, we shouldn't adopt that ourselves. If we become angry and we offend someone, we shouldn't just say, oh, it's Krishna's arrangement. He must have intended this, and then hide behind such an excuse. No, we should take responsibility for our actions, because devotees, we have to overcome these three gates leading to hell: lust, anger, and greed. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that he was durmati, in other words, his intelligence was not very good. So it's interesting because many people in India, they're aware of these great sages, Vashishta, etc. They may not have heard of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is much more elevated. He's a pure devotee of the Lord, not a demigod, not a rishi, not a sage, but actually a pure devotee, a personal associate of the Lord. So these devotees are not, they're not being upstarts, they're not being judgmental, they're just saying what it is so that we can understand properly. So in the next verse, when the hero Prashadra was thus cursed by his spiritual master, he accepted the curse with folded hands. So this is interesting. He's not, it's being mentioned here that he's a hero. It's not saying that he is a perpetrator. He's not being judged here, as the Bhagavatam is not judging him. And this story, there's some nice points here coming along that you can see why this story is in the Bhagavatam. So he accepted the curse with folded hands. Immediately, he didn't retaliate. He didn't resent it. He didn't resist it. He didn't revolt. Then, having controlled his senses, he took the vow of brahmacharya, which is approved by all great sages. And we see that the purpose of him taking brahmacharya is in the next verse here. Thereafter, Prashadra gained relief from all responsibilities, became peaceful in mind, and established control over all his senses, being unaffected by material conditions, being pleased with whatever was available by the grace of the Lord to maintain body and soul together, and being equal toward everyone. He gave full attention to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, who is the transcendental supersoul, free from material contamination. Thus, Prashadra, fully satisfied in pure knowledge, always keeping his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, achieved pure devotional service to the Lord and began traveling all over the world without affection for material activities, as if he were deaf, dumb, and blind. So this is a very elevated state of being. And naturally, because he gained control of his senses and he was meditating on the Lord, then his sinful reactions had been eradicated here. We say this verse sometimes when we're doing achman before we do puja or some other activity. It's Om apavitro pavitro va sarvavastam gatopi va yasmarit pundari kaksham sabhyabhyantara suchi. Purified or unpurified, or even having passed through so many situations, if one remembers the lotus-eyed Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is cleansed within and without. So this Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smarnam, hearing and chanting, remembering Vishnu, remembering Krishna. The life of a devotee from start to finish every day is such that we're always being reminded of Krishna. Whenever we eat, we offer it to Krishna. it's quite natural for devotees. Someone gives you something, you say, "Oh, is this offered?" Or someone offers you, gives you food, and you know it's not offered, then you'll either make an offering of it, or you'll say, "I can't take it, I only take prasad." We chant the holy names, we see the deities, we've got the books, we have the pictures, which are windows to the spiritual world. Our mind and senses are being purified day in, day out by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. He's written all these books so that we can become purified. And we feel that things that we used to do, we leave them in the past. Many things we were doing before we were attached, and we never thought we could give them up. But when we become attached to Krishna, any aspect of Krishna, whether it be the deity, the spiritual master, the devotees, prasadam, japa, reading, service, then by this attachment, we're simultaneously slackening the attachment for material life. Even our attachments to family and friends, when we see them in relation to Krishna, then that can become a source of liberation. Either our friends are devotees and we can speak about Krishna, or they're not devotees and we feel compassion for them. Same with family. We try to see everyone as devotees, and this way we can relate to them in different ways. The three ways of associating with devotees is for those who are junior to us, then we show some compassion to them, show kindness. And for those who are on level of peers or equals, then we are friendly. And those who are seniors or superiors, then we offer great respect. So it's saying here that because he was always fixed, his mind was always on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he achieved pure devotional service to the Lord and began traveling all over the world. So such devotees, they don't feel they belong to a particular place. They see everything as Krishna's, so they feel at home anywhere. With ourselves, sometimes we are quite attached to a particular place. And if that becomes our place of service, then that can also be liberating. And here we see that the situation of Prishadra was that he became so unattached to anything that he was able to travel anywhere and always trust in the Lord. And part of this is that he would accept whatever is made available by the grace of the Lord to maintain body and soul together. He wasn't working hard to build up an empire, and he was satisfied with the Lord's whatever the Lord provided. With this attitude, Prashadra became a great saint, and when he entered the forest and saw a blazing forest fire, he took this opportunity to burn his body in the fire. Thus he achieved the transcendental spiritual world. So earlier on, it was mentioned in the summary that he became a great Bhakti yogi, but also he had he was advanced in mystic yoga. So he was able to take advantage of this forest fire. It says here that he took up the opportunity to burn his body in the fire. He wasn't running away. He was able to take advantage of that and renounce his body and achieve the spiritual world. He was already in that position. This is called Jivan Mukta. That even though we're in material body, because we're, as Prabhupada would say, cent percent engaged in Krishna's service, then there's no difference between the material and the spiritual world. You probably know the story of the sage who was giving blessings, and he said to the butcher, "Don't live, don't die, because if you live, you're creating so much terrible karma, and if you die, you'll suffer terribly." And he said to the prince, "Live, don't die, because while you're living, you're enjoying, but when you die, you'll suffer for your transgressions." And they said to the brahmachari, "Die, don't live, because you're brahmachari, you're rightly situated now, you're in a pure condition, so better you die now in case you get entangled and contaminated." And they said to the devotee, "Live or die, it doesn't matter. So this is our situation as well, that our activities here in this material world, they mirror the activities of the spiritual world. Prabhupada gave us a lifestyle, which is actually the lifestyle of the liberated souls. There was one devotee in the early days said to Prabhupada, when we go back to Godhead, do we have to chant our japa? And Prabhupada says, you don't want to chant? The whole spiritual world is vibrating with the sound of Krishna's name. It's not that japa is a chore, and when we get to the spiritual world, we just throw the bead bag away forevermore. This is still got the enjoying spirit where we're thinking that we're going to chant the holy name in order to achieve something else. But actually, the holy name is the goal to be achieved. Taking shelter in Krishna's name, because Krishna's name and himself are non-different. So we'd never want to give up the shelter of the Lord through his holy name. So Prabhupada was talking in the purport here. Immediately after gave up his body in the fire, he reached the spiritual world as a result of his devotional service. So devotional service performed by thinking of the Supreme Lord is so powerful that although Prashadra was cursed, he avoided the terrible consequence of becoming Shudra and instead returned home back to Godhead. So Prabhupada calls this a terrible consequence of becoming a Shudra. And that could be because when one is a Shudra, their tendency is to be in a mode of ignorance, which means that there's every chance that they would commit more and more sins and become further entangled. So therefore, Prabhupada says we should not be satisfied to remain in the Sudra or Sudra consciousness. So there's one verse here from the Brahma Samhita. Yas Twindra Gopam Ati Atavendram Aho Swakarma Bandhanurupa Phala Bhajanam Atanoti Karmani Nirdahati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govindamari Purisham Tavam Bhajami. Those who engage in devotional service are unaffected by the results of their material activities. Otherwise, everyone from the smallest microbe up to the king of heaven, Indra, is subject to the laws of karma. Prabhupada mentions that in the material world, from the topmost to the bottom planet in the material world, all the places wherein repeated birth and death take place. So one may be an Indragopa, a tiny little microscopic insect, or one may be Indra, the king of heaven. But the law of karma is actually dictating our enjoyments and sufferings according to our previous activities. A pure devotee, being always engaged in the service of the Lord, is exempt from these laws. So that's because the devotee engages in akarma or nishkarma, where not only is when we engage in devotional service, we don't get some material reaction for our activities. Not only that, but we purify ourselves of past actions. So this is two for the price of one today. We're getting such a bargain here. This devotional service, it's not that devotional service is the atonement for our sins. The purification of our sins is a byproduct. Being reluctant to accept material enjoyment, Manu's youngest son, whose name was Kavi, gave up the kingdom before attaining full youth. Accompanied by his friends, he went to the forest, always thinking of the self-effulgent Supreme Personality of Godhead within the core of his heart. Thus he attained perfection. So here's another example. Manu's youngest son, Kavi, it says even before attaining full youth, he must have been very young, but he was attracted to devotional service of the Lord. Here it said, accompanied by friends, he went to the forest, always thinking of the self-effulgent Supreme Personality of Godhead within the core of his heart. So nowadays, if you tried to go to the forest, you'd probably like to come across someone with a chainsaw who's harvesting the forests. or you come across somebody who's camping, or if you go to any remote place in this world. One time I was in the Himalayas, 12,000 feet up in Nepal, and I was thinking this must be one of the most remote places. And it was also at winter time, so nobody was going there so much as a tourist. We were there looking for shaligrams, and we have many shaligrams here in Kurnabavan. If you haven't been, then come and take their darshan. So while I was thinking like this as such a remote place, then a military helicopter came flying down the valley, which reminded me that just over the other side of the mountains was China, and this is always a threat to Nepal. They took over Tibet some years ago, and they could easily just invade Nepal. So the point is that even you go to some remote place, but in Kali Yuga, everybody's flying around just trying to conquer over each other, trying to improve their lot, trying to enforce their ideologies upon each other. So I understood that actually there is no remote place. There's no going to the mountains, going to the caves, going to the forest in Kali Yuga. In Kali Yuga, the forest is International Society for Krishna Consciousness. This is the forest. The purpose of going to the forest is to get away from the materialistic persons and live a simple life. So this translates in Kali Yuga as joining the spiritual embassy. Prabhupada says that the temples of ISKCON are spiritual embassies. So when we go there, it's like an oasis in the desert. We find relief and we find security and purpose. And this security from material entanglement is through not simply vairagya or renunciation and living a simple life. Like Prabhupada said, if you renounce and you go to live in the forest, what you're renouncing, because Krishna also owns the forest. So the higher renunciation is to see that everything is Krishna's, the forest, the city, everything. And then we engage in devotional service. So when we go chanting on the streets, or we go out on book distribution, prasadam distribution, or we're doing some service, or we're at the temple associating with devotees. Here it said, accompanied by his friends, he went to the forest. So many of us, we joined the temple, brought our friends along, or our friend brought us along, or we make new friends at the temple. And we're always reminding each other, this is mentioned in the Gita, that the devotees are always enlightening one another by conversing about Krishna. Even sometimes when we have a difference of opinion, we're getting purified because Krishna is the subject. I think these are two very good examples of how, by always being attentive to thinking of the Lord, chanting, always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. Prabhupada said this is the most important principle of Krishna consciousness. And we do everything which is favorable for that and reject everything which is unfavorable, so that this is the principle we work on. If the objective is to always remember Krishna, never forget him, then the practice of it is to always accept that which is favorable and reject that which is unfavorable for Krishna consciousness. So this is how we make our mind our friend. The nature of the mind is to accept and reject. We make up our mind, we change our mind, we like, we don't like. These dualities are within the mind. And when we engage that faculty of the mind to accept and reject on the basis of Krishna consciousness, in the material world, people are accepting and rejecting on the basis of their sense gratification, their prestige, their material goals, etc. And even you take. I remember one devotee tell me that you take a halava and you offer it to a hog, it won't be interested, but if you give it stool, the hog thinks, well, very nice. This is very nice, palatable dish. So that's accepting on the basis of its conditioned senses. You can't see that halava is superior foodstuff. So when we accept and reject on the basis of Krishna consciousness, then we're elevating our mind, our senses become purified. And Prabhupada mentions in the Bhagavad Gita that when the senses are controlled by being engaged in the service of the Lord, Rishikesha, Sevanam Bhakti Uchate, then the senses become no more dangerous than a serpent with broken fangs. So if you had a snake attacking you which had no teeth, no ability to poison you, as long as it wasn't a constrictor, then you wouldn't be concerned. You know, it may just try to bite you, but it has no teeth. It would probably be quite frustrated with itself, or embarrassed, or afraid. But it couldn't have any effect on us. So the senses which engage in material sense gratification, they're very dangerous for us because Bogashvaya Prasaktanam Tayapatik Chetasam, that if one is too attached to Boga and Aishwarya, sense enjoyment and opulence, then Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Ikiha Karunandana, that this this single pointedness, this resolute determined devotional service doesn't take place. So of course we shouldn't be too down on ourselves. We didn't join this Krishna conscious movement as pure devotees. It takes time. But it'll take the time it takes depends on how much we want to apply ourselves. Just like if you wanted to pass your driving test, you could go for a week-long crash course, and then you could perhaps pass your driving test within a week. Or you could take one lesson a week and then do it over a few months. Or you could take one lesson a year and maybe do it after 50 years. Or maybe not at all, because by the time you get your next lesson, you forgot. So the idea is that basically we try to, whatever time we have, utilize it to remember Krishna. Sometimes we're engaged in many different activities and it's hard to directly remember Krishna, but our purpose for working and various other duties, etc., is so that we can maintain body and soul and any other dependence we may have, so that either we can continue with our devotional service or Krishna consciousness, or in the hope that they also become devotees. It's interesting that Kavi was reluctant to accept material enjoyment even from a young age. And Krishna says, whatever advancement we make in spiritual life, we carry on from the previous life. And he says that for the unsuccessful yogi, next life, Suchinam Shimatam Gehi Yoga Brasta Bijayati, that one takes birth either in a Suchi or a Srimatam. Suchi means clean, which means Brahmin. One takes birth in a family of Brahmins or devotees, or one takes birth in a situation where they are going to meet the devotees and can take to devotional service. They may not be born directly in a Brahmin family, but get the opportunity to engage in devotional service by meeting the devotees. Or they take birth in a family of Suchanam Srimatam. Shri means Lakshmi, goddess of fortune, which means they're born in a situation where they're not poverty stricken. They're not so poor that they have to think about how they're going to find food or water or shelter. That becomes their daily meditation. That's a distraction. So if one is too destitute, then one can't be peacefully performing devotional service. And yoga brasta bijayate, that one is automatically attracted to principles of yoga, even without searching them out. Krishna makes that arrangement. He's within our heart, and he makes sure that whatever advancement we make, we carry on from the next life. So we should be careful though with that verse, that we don't think, oh well, that's good, I'll just take it easy now and I'll carry on next life. That can make many lives. It may be that we're actually stayed the same in the last life, and that could go on for who knows how long. But Prabhupada encouraged us all to become Krishna conscious and go back to Godhead in this lifetime. If we dedicate our life to serving this Krishna conscious movement, this Sankirtan movement, to whatever capacity we can, then we will be guaranteed to go back to Godhead after this life. Prabhupada said, if you dedicate your life to this Sankirtan movement, guaranteed you go back to Godhead after this life. So whether that service in the Sankirtan movement is on the street distributing books, or doing some other service at the temple, which is helping to serve the results of the frontline preaching, such as if we're at the temple, maybe helping with festivals, or maintaining the temple in some way, or doing some regular service, then these things are all connected. We have to see that connection as well. We have to have the spirit of trying to connect people with Krishna. So these two examples of Kavi and Prishadra, these are two examples of, by engaging in devotional service and keeping our attention on Krishna, that we can become free from this material world. And it's all up to us. The interesting thing, sometimes even the scary thing, is that it's nobody else who's going to stop us going back to Godhead other than ourselves. And so therefore it's completely our free will, and it's our responsibility, it's our ability to go back to Godhead by taking advantage of what Prabhupada has given us. And this way we can also go back to Godhead like these two great personalities did, regardless of what our past life was. Okay, I'll just stop there. Anyone get any comments or questions?
Okay, thank you very much, Prabhu. That was a wonderful class as always. So if anyone has any questions, please do raise your virtual hands, or if you can put your cameras on, and then I'll call you out. Prabhu, you were talking about curses at the beginning, and I was just contemplating that throughout the Bhagavatam, you see all these sages who have got the ability to give curses, and they have done so. So what can we learn from that? Because obviously you were talking about sense control, and if these sages are unable to control their senses, what chance do we actually have of doing so in Kali Yuga?
Well, it's a very good question. Thank you, because we tend to think in those days the atmosphere was much more conducive, whereas we've been bombarded by different sense objects. But actually, Rupa Goswami says that, and other great devotees, they say that Kali Yuga is the most blessed of ages, because there's this Kali Dosha Nidhi Rajan, was it Mahaguna Sahapatma? So even though Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, and the amount of sins you can commit in a day in Kali Yuga, it's unbelievable. But it's wonderful that simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, Mukta Sangam Param Vrajet, the one can go back to Godhead. So in one sense, we've actually got an even better opportunity, because they say that the demigods are keen to come. They're queuing up to take birth in Kali Yuga, because this is just like sale of the century, sale of the Yuga, where simply by chanting Hare Krishna mantra, one is promoted to the spiritual world. And the Supreme Lord himself, in his most merciful incarnation, Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prem Pradayati Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gora Tulsi Nama, he came to give pure love of God to everybody, regardless of any qualification or disqualification. So we have, in one sense, we've got an even better opportunity, because this person, Prashida, he was cursed by his guru for some mistake he made. But our Guru is not in that mode. He was saying, it was said there, Prabhupada said it was mode of ignorance to curse your disciple for that purpose. But actually, our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, he's so merciful that he's given us some engagement, which is purifying us. So if we have that connection with the Guru Parampara, then they're behind us the whole way. So Harinam, Harinam, Harinam Evkevalam Kalo Nishtiva Nishtiva Gatira Nyata. So in the age of Kali Yuga, we don't have to be concerned about what was the causes of liberation in previous ages. That's not what's concerning to us. It's simply chanting holy name. And Krishna says, Satatam Kirtiyantam Mam. So Satatam doesn't just mean to say whenever you can think about it, but to always chant. Prabhupada says we chant 16 rounds on the beads and unlimited off the beads. So we have a very good opportunity. Actually, it's been made very easy. We just have to chant Hare Krishna. Prabhupada said it's so simple we could miss it. But if we keep on doing it and keep on bringing our consciousness back to being attentive to chanting, attentive to our reading, etc., then we won't miss it. Is that okay?
Yep, thank you, Prabhu. Janakanya Mataji, would you like to ask your question?
I think Bridget was before me.
I'll go to Brigitte Mataji in a moment.
Up to you. Is okay. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
It's how is it different from the spiritual world those days than it is in our material world today? In a way, I find the whole story in this chapter to be kind of confusing in a way that is like a board game, really. When you think about somebody praying for a son and they receive a daughter, and the wife just wished for a daughter, and then the daughter appear. Now in this world, I know we women aren't that well powerful to have that kind of mystic power, I should say. How is it different then? Because it's kind of confusing, sons and all these different sons and how many there are, and what's the meaning of it all? How does it connect to making sense? I wonder. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh.
Yeah. Sorry, what exactly is your question, Bridget?
No, it's Janukanya.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, what is your question actually?
How does it connect the spiritual world story to our way of living in the material world when it's so confusing?
So these are stories of people in the material world who are attaining the spiritual world. And it's certainly in Kali Yuga, it's nothing unusual to be confused. That is one of the characteristics of the age, that we easily get bewildered. It's mentioned that even great sages often disagree what is the right thing in Kali Yuga. So it's just natural like that. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that in Kali Yuga, well, in the material world actually, there's only two things of real substance, and that is the jiva and the holy name, or the soul in the holy name. So if you feel confused, then just keep taking shelter of Krishna, keep chanting, and things will become more clear. Sometimes there's long lists of dynasties there because they didn't. This is how they kind of recorded things in the past. Just like for the record nowadays, people would have photographs or videos or whatever they would do to keep some kind of file. So for example, if nobody kept any films or photographs or records of what happened in the Second World War, people might think, oh, it's exaggeration. How could so many people be killed like that? When the population of the world is still so big. So unless there's some kind of record there. So in one sense, this was a record, and it's showing you the dynasty, and these dynasties carry on to today. Sometimes people go to a temple in India and they'll ask, which Gotra are you from, which means which dynasty. But in Kali Yuga, this is not so important. That was important then, and it showed you that these were personalities who had, it was showing you the connection all these persons had. It's not necessarily that we have to remember all of them, and there's not a great deal of information mentioned about them. But I was just thinking there must have been great personalities, the fact that their name is put on the Bhagavatam pages. But what we read in the Bhagavatam is only a speck of the glories of Krishna. It's, Krishna's glories are unlimited, so it's mentioned that the Bhagavatam that the demigods have is like much, much greater than what we have. So this is just a glimpse into the wonderful pastimes of the Lord's devotees. And the various people from the various dynasties, it's showing you that some of them actually, they didn't carry on with simply just populating the universe, etc. Some of them broke free and left this material world altogether. So it's showing you an example of even people from prestigious dynasties or from situations where, like we see in Kavi, he was destined to be a king or a prince, but he just gave it up. He wasn't interested. I hope that answers your question somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat. Thank you.
Yeah, I think when we're confused, then, or when we're confused about certain things, maybe we don't have to be too concerned about certain things and try to just see the essence of it. The essence of this chapter, I would say, is that we see that there's some people took advantage of, one person took advantage of an inauspicious situation and turned it around, where instead of taking birth and suffering for something that he didn't take birth again. He went back to Godhead because he took shelter in Krishna. And then the other one was, instead of becoming entangled in a world of material opulence, he just went to Krishna also and left that behind. So I would say that's the kind of most important things of this particular chapter.
Oh, that makes sense. Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, Mataji. And
Hey, Brigitte Mataji, would you like to ask your question? Hare Krishna.
Hi, Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for this beautiful session and all your wisdom. My question is more related to devotional service. You talk so much about devotional service, and I wonder how how you can do devotional service when you are starting in and you are learning and being Krishna conscious, and if you are not, you don't have a temple nearby, and maybe you don't have maybe devotees around you, you don't have a community physically nearby. When you are starting, how you can do devotional service in the world outside in general.
Okay, very good question. Because as natural devotee, when we come to hear about Krishna consciousness, we're in a situation which is not surrounded by things which are favourable for devotional service. So we try to think, how can I bring that into my life? And the Prabhupada explains to us that this devotional service begins with the tongue, from taking prasad and from chanting the holy names. So if we make sure that all the food which we're eating is offered to Krishna, that's devotional service. And if we chant Hare Krishna mantra, we try to chant 16 rounds a day or work our way up to that. If in the beginning we might chant one a day or two or four, but try to keep a certain minimum and don't go below that. And this helps us to actually transcend the mind. It's just like watering a plant. If you decide you water it one day, don't water it another day, and then maybe you don't water for 2 weeks, and then you throw a bucket of water on it, then the plant won't know what's happening to it. But you water just a little bit every day, and the plant will grow steadily. So we just chant a little bit every day, and we gradually build up to that. If we can do 16 a day or even more, then that's fine, and read a little every day. So by doing this, we're making our home a temple. There might not be a temple, just like this year in Scotland, Crunabavan, 40 years ago, we didn't have a temple. We came to Scotland from the manor with the intention to start a temple, and it's 40 years now, but there was no temple when we came. So who knows, perhaps you'll start a temple there, you meet other people who are interested, and you'll start a temple. But even if there's not a temple there, you can try to, maybe on your holidays or weekends, try to go and visit a temple. How far do you live from a temple?
Yeah, the temple closest is 8 hours by car. It's another city.
Okay, are you in the UK?
No, actually, I am on the opposite side of the world. I am in Colombia. I live here.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, so 8 hours is a long way. It means if you go that way, you have to spend a day or two there, isn't it? If you're making such a difference. So the thing to do there is try to see if there's any devotees in your area, or just you can join online classes, online sanghas, and the temple programs. Many places are online as well, so that way you can get association. You can also do some courses, like back to Shastri Gita classes. But even on your own, if you just pray to Krishna, then Krishna will. Prabhupada once, actually, I used to live in Cambridge, and I didn't really have any association. And I read this quote. Prabhupada says that you have to create association. And because Lord Chaitanya said there's devotees in every town and village, that means that actually everybody's a devotee. And we may just, if we pray to Krishna, we may actually just find some people who are even in our town and village. For example, I came from a town outside Glasgow. The population is only about 50,000, if even that. But many devotees came from that town. And so many other places. I know one small place down in down in England, and a few devotees came from that same village, and they both ended up in Scotland, funnily enough. So to be in the beginning stages, Prabhupada says that hearing and chanting is the beginning. So just to offer all our food to Krishna, make sure the food we are offering is offerable, if you know how to do that, and chant and read. In this way, we're taking Prabhupada's association when we read his books. We're getting directly his association. And pray to Krishna, and Krishna will make some opportunity for you. Is that okay?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And finally, Sadhu Mataji, would you like to ask your question? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for tonight. I am kind of confused here, because in what I have learned and understood, that doing if you do suicide, it's wrong, right? Is sin. You shouldn't do suicide, right?
That's right, yeah.
So in my understanding here, there's two things that makes me very confused. One is the family spiritual master of Prasahara. He, first of all, he cursed him, even though that actually he should be more lenient. It says it here. He should be more lenient, but he had tamagun quality in himself. And the other thing is confusing is that he commits suicide, actually, because he goes in the forest, in the how to say, burning forest and kill himself, right? So that is a
Yeah.
suicide, right?
Appears like that, doesn't it? But there's a difference. So that there's 2 points there that you made. Thank you for bringing that up. So the first one is the spiritual master didn't give him. He wasn't very kind to him. He didn't seem to understand the situation very well. But Prabhupada, you mentioned it's like a family guru, and a family guru is more like a family priest. It's not that he's actually an elevated, self-realized soul, because our understanding of guru is what Prabhupada taught us. Basically means pure devotee, a transcendentalist. So, and that we can see that this was being pointed out. This was in the mode of ignorance because he wasn't actually on that platform. So, and also the other side, the other question is this suicide. It wasn't a suicide in the sense that he'd already become purified and he was a mystic yogi. So sometimes these mystic yogis, they are in control of their own destination. So, for example, when Prabhupada was coming close to the end and the devotees realized he could leave at any time, they were begging him, please ask, please stay with us. And he said, I'll ask Krishna. So then the devotees said, okay, so what did Krishna say? They said, it's up to me. And he said, so what do you say? He said, it's up to Krishna. So the point here is that Prabhupada could stay or go. And these other elevated souls, when they're purified of all karma, there's nothing to keep them in the material world. So suicide is often taken as some kind of escape route to escape suffering or frustration, etc. But he wasn't doing that. He was already a liberated soul, even within this material world at that stage. And he had the mystic ability to consume his own body, just like Sati. She did the Sati rite. She was able to do that due to mystic power. So it appears to be the same action, but it's on a different level. Do you see that?
Thank you. I'm sorry to say that still I have still tough time to understand it. But thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. If we do it, it would be a sin because we've been given this body by Krishna to serve him, and we have a term which we have to endure, or we have to serve this term here. But when one is already liberated, then they're not dependent on material circumstances. They can choose. And he said to you that he took the opportunity of the forest fire. It's not that necessarily he just walked into the flames, because if he was simply on the bodily platform, as soon as there was some excessive heat, he would have run away. Naturally, the instinct to survive would have kicked in, but he was so much in control of his senses that he was able to take advantage of the forest fire and use his mystic powers to leave this material world, and he went back to Godhead. So obviously there was no sinful reaction. It wasn't a sin. This was a different action, a different purpose to his action.
Thank you.
All right. Hare Krishna.